Good evening. I would like to call the February 11th, 2019 Bellbrook City Council meeting to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Edwards.
Here.
Mr. Greenwood.
Here.
Mr. McGill.
Here.
Mrs. Middlestetter.
Here.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schweller.
Here.
Mayor Baird.
Here. Formal approval of the regular meeting minutes of January 28th, 2019. Does any member on council have any corrections or additions to the regular city council meeting minutes of our last meeting?
None, Mayor. No, Mayor. None, Mayor.
Seeing none, the minutes are approved as written. Mayor's announcements. We have a few things going on this evening. First we have some oaths of office, and I would like to thank all of our board members who are either new or being sworn back in for a second term for all their hard work. We have board members from both the BZA, Planning Board, Mayor Graves from the Records Commission, Old Village Review Board, and also two for the Old Village Review Board. So with that, I will come up here and call each person up, and we will do the oath for each of those offices. And we'll start with Mr. Stengel. First fish in the barrel. How you doing, Ed?
I'm doing well.
Ed, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Ed Stengel,
I, Ed Stengel,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and I will obey the laws thereof,
and I will obey the laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
in all respects,
in all respects,
uphold and enforce
uphold and enforce
the provisions of the Charter
the provisions of the Charter
and the ordinances of Bellbrook,
and the ordinances of Bellbrook,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
upon which
upon which
I'm about to enter.
I'm about to enter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just need a signature. Love it. Okay. Okay, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Next, Village Review Board, Jeff Owens. Okay, let's go. I wish it was that easy. Please raise your right hand, Mr. Owens, and repeat after me. I, Jeff Owens,
I, Jeff Owens,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and will obey the laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
in all respects,
in all respects,
uphold and enforce
uphold and enforce
the provisions of the Charter
the provisions of the Charter
and the ordinances of Bellbrook,
and the ordinances of Bellbrook,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you very much once again, and I just need a signature,
Sir.
and it's the 11th, correct? Thank you very much. And next, Mrs. McGill.
Hey, Mayor, may I make a suggestion? Turn this way. Here, you stand over there.
You're going to use this one?
Yeah,
Okay.
I come from this direction.
All right.
That way that I kind of get both of your faces. Yeah,
You're fine.
yeah, just like, perfect.
Thanks, Louis.
Thank you.
Mrs. McGill, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Karen McGill,
I, Karen McGill,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
thereof,
thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
in all respects,
in all respects,
uphold and enforce
uphold and enforce
the provisions of the Charter,
the provisions of the
the
Charter,
ordinances of Bellbrook,
the ordinances of Bellbrook,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you very much. Just a couple more. Aaron Burke.
He's not here.
Not here. Okay. We have one more. Mayor Gray. Mayor Gray and I both are on the Records Commission, and I'm not sure how, this will be our 8th year. Mayor Gray, would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me?
I will.
She's done this for me a number of times. I, Mayor Graves,
I, Mary Perry,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
thereof,
thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
in all respects,
in all respects,
uphold and enforce
uphold and enforce
the provisions of the Charter
the provisions of the Charter
and the ordinances of Bellbrook,
and the ordinances of Bellbrook,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Thank you very much.
And I will sign. Without my glasses, so this would be.
Well, I had to run back to the car.
Put my finger down the place. Right there.
I know, because I got to fill this out too. If I don't take myself, I'll put
Put
them
my finger on it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And that is it this evening. We have one other person to swear in. I once again would like to thank all of our board members for volunteering their services. Without those members assisting us on these boards, we would have a lot of difficulty. In the past, we've had problems getting people to volunteer for these boards. And this year, especially the planning board, we're working through the comprehensive plan, and I know Ed and his group have had a lot of work to do on the planning board. So moving on, we have the Bellbrook Police Chief, Doug Daughtery. Doug is going to give us the 2018 Department Annual Report. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I've done this a few times, so I'm getting more comfortable seeing you guys up here, so thank you for having me. The first slide, we had our annual Christmas party, and we kept our beards long enough. We did our beards for Brian, thing. It was a fundraiser for Brian Mead. So we kept our beards long enough to have our Christmas party, and we raised about $800 for him. And if you see in the picture, there's several of us holding papers and stuff. So each person was voted on by Brian and his wife. Best beard, most likely to look like Chewbacca, stuff like that. You probably would like to hear that I was voted most likely to look like Bradley Cooper, so off we go. Grammy winner. So the first slide here, calls for police service. Really not much of a change if you look at it from top to bottom. The changes that we do have, like B&E from 18 to 17, it's hard to really define what we can do to prevent that. I think being in the neighborhoods and doing preventive measures like we do assist, but as you can see from the past 4 years, it's kind of a ebb and flow kind of staff. And all of the pluses and minuses are somewhat negligible, I believe. Even the suspicious person and traffic enforcement, overall, I mean, it looks like it's down, like minus 46. It's not 46%, but down 46. It's still a pretty close number from years past. So Moving along, the types of crime that we have. Still, the number one for us is theft. Predominantly, I think, theft from motor vehicles, although that number, I believe, it's down from 2015, but it's right about in line from the last 2 years. So we work very hard to try to get the word out and everything we do to have residents lock their vehicles. So I'll say it here tonight, please lock your vehicles. Don't leave anything in the car that you wouldn't want to have lost or stolen. But everything else, I'd say drug-related is actually down. So we're happy about that. Again, I don't know if there's anything that we're doing specific to that, to take credit for that, but we're just being visible, we're making stops, we're looking in cars when it's applicable, so we're still out there looking, but perhaps that type of activity is just kind of waning a little bit. That's our hope. Okay. Traffic accidents. Up slightly from last year. It's 68 from 59, and it's probably just a little bit up from the last 3 years, just a tick. I think I don't know, other than perhaps there's a little more people in the area. The streets are a little busier. Perhaps there's people in the area that don't know it quite as well, but we remain committed to working in the neighborhoods, and we're a large part of these happen in the neighborhoods and speeding and things which actually lead to accidents, but we work with the service department to put the speed board out. We look at the numbers, speed board out, and then we sit and run radar afterwards at the same location. So, Little Sugar Creek is an area that I think we've done the most improvement on. We've added a couple of speed signs there. We put the speed board out there for a fair amount of time this past year, which would make the resident across from the vineyards extremely happy. So she tells me every time I see her that it's very loud and a lot of speeders out there, but we're actually working on that. So, but she's happy with what we're doing, as I hope you are. So types of accidents there, you can see that there's in the roadway, the private property, it's all pretty much kind of an uptick in hit skip this year, which just means that someone was involved in an accident and left the scene before we could get there, or they may have backed into a car or something and left without leaving any information. The biggest reason for these is the failure to control, starting and backing, again, and then maybe not providing enough room in front of you. Those are our big three. Starting and backing is obviously coming out of the neighborhoods. Failure to control, maybe a little speed related, as is the short clear distance. Something we're kind of really happy about this, the bike patrol. It goes back to the joint effort with the council giving us the bikes a few years ago. We've added 2 more officers to this. The 2 officers that were part-time that came on full-time, luckily for us, were both trained as bike officers, so we were able to increase the bike hours greatly. So over 300 hours of bike time this year, and as you can see, there's a lot of effort put into those by Officers Johnson, Officer Warren, and Officer Burns. And what doesn't say here is the number of contacts that they made, which is the the concept of the community policing initiative for us is not just being out there, but making contact with people and taking the time to talk to children or play basketball or ask about, people can ask about any kind of issue that they're dealing with that they maybe wouldn't call the police department per se, but it's a great initiative, and we very much look forward to continuing that. And being a competitive person, I'd like to come back here next year and have that number just up, and not down, so we'll be working on that. Use of force analysis, every year I come here thankfully and gratefully that we just do not have a lot of that to use. The taser, as you can see, it was not deployed, but it was displayed, which means it was taken out of its holster. So close to being used, but not used. Use of force, hands-on. So basically, that just means that we had to, physically had to use perhaps a joint manipulation to get somebody in handcuffs or something like that. But it didn't go beyond that, where we had to use other less lethal options. So very proud of that and very happy, and I think the training that we continue to do and use for the officers is indicative to the numbers you see here. Police management, the fleet management rather. What you doing? Okay. The numbers, the biggest, as you can see, the repair costs are way down from years past with the Dodges, and that was something that we were hoping for. Now, as the Tauruses get a little older, we may see a slight uptick in repair costs, but should be much less than the Dodges were at their worst time. Miles per gallon is about in line with what we normally see. The difference in the mileage that you see there, obviously my car and the detective car are going to be a little different. They're not the patrol vehicles, but pretty much you're going to see the 11 to 13 miles per gallon there. The one outlier there is car 77, and I think if you leave the car idling, it takes away from our actual miles per gallon, actually. But I think an overall good average, a 13.6 average for the vehicles there, and I think that's what we were hoping for when we got these vehicles. I mean, on top of everything else they provide us with the room and the ability to put the things that we need in the trunk and the front of the car with the computers. Okay, the Wall of Honor. We had Bob Loudermilk retire as a full-time officer this past fall. You were all here for that. That was wonderful. So we went downstairs and got a picture. Thought that was really nice. And he's due to come back tomorrow as a part-time officer to supplement our ranks as we go through somewhat of a transitional time. And he was nice enough to, and still had the desire to come back part-time to fill in gaps every so often. So he's there's no cost or outlay for uniforms or training or anything like that. Everything's good to go. So he provides a valuable service to us still. Here you have Sergeant Carman, who was part of the future chefs.
How long is he going to do that? Is it just temporary? Is it like a more longer term thing?
I don't know exactly. We're going to kind of play it by ear to see. It can't be too long term. And the purpose really is not for it to be long term.
Okay.
He's not a long term solution per se, but we are still looking at options as far as other part time people to come in, and we would train them, and then perhaps another full-time position, may have to look at that as well. So we're kind of watching that with a cautious eye to see kind of where we are. Just visiting the kids at Stephen Bell. It was some kind of popcorn day, or so I asked wear the hat, and you wouldn't believe that just putting the hat on would create such a laugh riot up there. The dairy shed, picture with us with the workers and the owner. The dairy shed, why that's in there is we had a community policing initiative where we passed out coupons for children that we saw doing something positive in the neighborhood, riding their bike with their helmet, obeying the traffic laws, doing something polite. Huge hit, very popular with both the parents, the children, and dairy shed, and as well as us. We enjoyed doing that. And the bottom there, Tony Rubel is out there with some children that had received some coupons, so 6 happy children there. Tony Vetter at the
Farmers Market.
Farmers Market, thank you. So that was always fun, and we always like being part of that. Mr. Cool, Mark Burns. This was at our National Night Out, as well as the next picture with Bob, who's making the grill for us. And we have a couple pictures of when we were out walking in the neighborhood walks. Those have become pretty popular. In fact, this past year we had somebody that was waiting for us with chocolate chip cookies and bottles of water. They were actually waiting on their porch, waiting for us to come by, which was fantastic. I'm way ahead here. That is Jamie Johnson, who received an award for handling a domestic violence case with Officer Scott Sands. So he was recognized at the countywide domestic violence meeting. I believe Councilwoman Middlestead was there. It was a nice organization and a nice effort to do that. This is our shoes, FOP shoes program for the children in the Bellbrook schools. So we would go and pick up children that might be in need of some new shoes, and we go and take them, and they pick out shoes and socks. And if you've never done that, it is so heartwarming to go and put them in shoes and clean socks that they don't have normally. So if there's any other reason to get into police work, that is a fantastic reason to do so. Wonderful. And of course, the obligatory Christmas shot with Jackie and Santa. So that is the presentation that I have for you tonight. Do you have any questions? I know this is kind of an abbreviated version of the whole package you have before you, but I'll answer any questions that you may have.
I have one for you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
This past year, we implemented the body cameras.
I think it's been a couple years, but yes.
How, have you audited the effectiveness of the cameras and,
Well,
and their use?
I think the use of force is a great indicator of that. We haven't had to use it. The officers obviously know that they've had it. For us, for record keeping, for report purposes, for the Ohio Collaborative, we have to make sure that we're writing down on the reports that the camera is on or the camera was off. And so there was a little bit of a learning curve with the officers having to tap it on, tap it off when they needed to have it on or when they could turn it off. But overall, everybody's with the program, and it's wonderful. No issues whatsoever.
Good, thank you.
Sure.
Chief, I appreciate the report. I didn't get a chance to read it all. We just got our copies this evening. But from your perspective, what is the number one takeaway from the police report for this year, for 2018?
I'd say the number one takeaway is, well, it's a kind of multi-layered answer there, but our community policing efforts are fantastic. If I don't mind saying, we really take a lot of time and effort to get into doing that. We're mindful with how we impose the laws and what we can do. We don't do it just because we can do it. We do it because it's the right thing to do for the right reason. So if you can marry those two ideas together, I think in any city or township, village,
Mhm.
I think you're going to be successful. And I think we see the fruits of that type of effort before you with the report.
Good, thank you. It seems like too, the drug thing's been down quite a bit, and that surprised me, because Greene County, we just heard the other night from the prosecutor that there was like 1,200 compared to like 600, you know, in an annual basis, which, I mean, the workload almost doubled on just the indictments for drugs, and it just seems like it's getting to be huger and huger. I'm glad to see that Bellbrook is half of last year.
Well, we have, if we have a major drug case, we do turn those over to the task force, and they do the investigations for us on those. But I think the numbers you see here are the things that we come in contact with on a day-to-day basis, maybe not a long-term investigation, but
Mhm.
things that we would run across on a traffic stop
Yep.
or, patting someone down before you put them in the cars, things like that. Or calls to a home, and you get to see things in the home, and we investigate those. So it's interesting. I don't know really quite how to explain
Mhm.
the deaths up and numbers for us are down, but we're ready, willing, and able to handle anything that comes our way in that line.
Good. Well, thank you for the report, and thank your staff for the work they're doing. It's a good job, and I think the community policing has been top-notch, and I think keep it up.
Yes, thank you.
Pardon me? I didn't hear you.
He's asking, can he ask a
Oh.
question? Normally we don't, but I go right ahead. But so you have to come up because no one can hear you because you're on TV. So if you have a quick question, normally we would wait till then, but the chief may not be.
Have you done any sting operations or considered any sting operations? Like leaving a nice new bike in front of ducks and wait for someone to come by and try and steal it?
We would look at options for things that, if bike theft was running rampant and we needed to do things like that we might look at that, but fortunately, that's not an issue for us. I would like to say the thing that is running rampant for us is the unlocked vehicle. So if people could lock their cars, that would be fantastic and a big help to us. You'd be shocked to learn what kind of things people leave in their car unlocked. So that would be great.
And we're not seeing
Did I
people-
answer your question?
We're not seeing people break into the cars, right? They're usually
What?
just flip the handle and open it if it's open.
Because the car's open.
Because that is the most vexing thing for us, is that they don't lock it because, I'm told this, they don't lock it because they don't want the windows to be broken or the car damaged. But I said, these people are opportunists. They're not going to break a window and draw attention to themselves and therefore end their night of thievery. So they're trying to be stealth and just check open doors. So if you lock your car, it's not going to be a problem.
But
Or
please-
don't leave your things in the car.
But please don't leave your keys in the car.
Yes, that's.
What, were there 3 or 4 of those on this last week?
You seem to be unlocking a lot of cars.
Well, we unlock a lot of cars.
Yeah, when it's cold,
Yeah.
sometimes people leave our cars running, and
Yeah.
I have to remind even our officers not to do that. We had
Yeah.
a departmental meeting, and I asked them, please do not do that. I've had, been at organizations where that's happened, and I can't even begin to tell you the level of angst that creates with the equipment that we have in our car if someone would take it. So we're all learning, and we're all trying to get better, so.
How about porch pirates? I know they always advertise, get the new Nest and the new Ring and everything, so you can see people stealing your packages off your porch. You
We
guys-
have, we've actually used that on occasion to look at things. We had a aggravated burglary several months ago, and we actually went around to the neighbors that did to the neighbors to see if they'd seen anything or if they had the Ring doorbell to use as evidence. In that case, we did not find anything, but that's actually, part of our efforts now and police knowledge to be able to go and ask and look into that. But it is always something, people are always willing to offer that to us too, if that is helpful to us.
Uh-huh.
But overall, fortunately, it's not a big issue throughout the Bellbrook city, so, but it is something that is a tool that we would use if we needed to.
Okay.
Chief, has the midnight bike patrol had any effect on crime? Do we make a lot of arrests or solve any crimes when the officer's driving from midnight to whenever, especially like car thefts and things like that?
Officer Johnson was credited with stopping somebody that was out doing things. He ended up having a warrant.
Mhm.
We didn't have him tied to a car necessarily, but generally when somebody's not from Bellbrook and they're on foot, say from Springfield, at 3 o'clock in the morning, there's generally, I think you can probably put one and one together, but he had a warrant, and we were able to, take him off the street, so it may have prevented a number of, that number 40 for thefts may have been up higher. And I'll say this too, is residents, if you have a theft, please call us and let us know, because they're the eyes and ears of the community, the heartbeat of what's going on. They need to call and tell us what's happening. Oftentimes they'll not let us know or not tell us or report it because they just don't want to bother us. They think we're too busy. So we're never too busy to take calls or reports. If we're not doing that, we're going to be doing something else. So we encourage people to lock their cars, call us if there's any kind of an issue, and we'll take care of it.
I think some people probably don't want to call you because maybe they're a little embarrassed that they left their car unlocked.
Yeah, that could be.
It could be.
Yes. So I think we've established today, lock your cars.
Lock your car.
Yeah.
How
Very
widely
important.
publicized are our bike patrols? I mean, that could be a deterrent in itself. I mean, I know probably a lot of the crime that takes place at night probably isn't Bellbrook residents. It's probably people from other places, and they may not know. But, I think that if I'm a criminal and I'm coming to Bellbrook, if I know that there's a bike patrol, which is pretty stealth, driving around neighborhoods, I'm probably not going to choose that city.
We were just asked to kind of update some of our newsletter items and agenda items, and that is something that we would like to put on there. There's a couple other ideas that came forth, but that is one that we're going to try to celebrate, broadcast a little more to get out there. But I don't know, as a young officer out there on a bike, I don't know if there's anything better, 3 o'clock in the morning, and having the cool air hit you, riding around all night to do that. So.
I know it keeps young kids off the streets.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go into that.
So
Multiple
it's working
benefits.
well.
Yes.
I noticed that Jamie doesn't go up the hill at West Sudbury Court very often.
Not too many people do.
No.
We can come in the other way and then ride down.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other member on council, any questions for our police chief this evening?
I just have one, Chief. You said there's a little uptick in accidents. I think we all know that traffic's going to increase. Do you have any plan to possibly, do you think it's speed or?
Well, it's a short, it's
Inattention.
what's the numbers?
Distraction.
On that? Failure to control and assured clear distance are, I would say, are the ones more responsible for
Okay.
being out on the main roads. Wilmington and Franklin, we get those, I would say, is the most. And we are out there on, as Councilman McGill can tell you, that we sit out there often
Yes.
in areas where we get complaints, number one, and where we have accidents. So all we can do is just keep being visible and put the speed boards up and use other discretionary tools to our advantage, I think, is what we're going to do.
Okay.
Have you seen a lot of, with this distraction of people fussing with their phones and GPS? I just heard the most horrible story the other night about that accident in Sugar Creek. The guy was messing with his GPS, and I won't even want to go into what happened.
Yes, yeah, I'm aware of that, that incident, and it's I can tell you it's such an issue today where they updated our accident reports and report writing, and one of those is distracted driving column, so they can, do the tabulations on those. and then there's a whole block of how are they distracted. You probably have seen people with little dogs on their laps, or looking at their phone, or talking, or all these things that weren't around when we were young drivers ourselves. So that's something that maybe we can try to get that broadcast a little bit too. Is distracted driving. Somehow we can push that out in a newsletter form as well.
I wonder if a shared clear distance isn't tied into that, because they look up and, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's, well, we had it was, I think the beginning of last year, we had a jogger that was hit because someone wasn't paying attention. It was coming in from a side road to Franklin, and luckily they weren't injured too terribly, but it is very frustrating in today's world, where you have so many things pulling your attention away from actually the skill of driving a car.
Any other questions on council? Chief, thank you very much for the report.
Thank you, everybody.
It looks like Bellbrook is in good shape, and please keep up the good job, and tell all the other officers thanks for work well done.
I will.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor's announcements. One more thing. I think I saw Mr. Burke walk in, and we will do our last oath of office this evening. Mr. Burke is on the Board of Zoning Appeals and Property Review Commission. Probably some of the more exciting boards we have sometimes. So first, thank you very much once again for volunteering your time. So if you can come over here. Louis gave me instructions not to do it, I have to follow. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Aaron Burke,
I, Aaron Burke,
solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of Ohio,
of the State of Ohio,
and will obey the laws
and will obey the laws
thereof, and that I will,
and that I will,
in all respects, uphold and enforce the provisions of the Charter
the provisions of the Charter
and the ordinances of Bellbrook,
and the ordinances of Bellbrook,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Thank you very much, and I just need a signature. And thank you very much for coming out tonight, and appreciate your service. And that is all we have for mayor's announcements. We do have a public hearing of ordinances this evening, ordinance number 2019-5. Mr. Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance number 2019-5, an ordinance adding Chapter 810, Small Cell Facilities and Wireless Structures, to the codified ordinances of Bellbrook, Ohio. Whereas House Bill 478 of the 132nd General Assembly, House Bill 478, has been enacted and became effective on August 1st, 2018. Whereas the City of Bellbrook wishes to establish general procedures and standards for wireless facilities and structures in order to comply with HB 478. And whereas the City Council seeks to comply with HB 478 and codify general procedures and standards for the siting, construction, placement, collection, modification, operation, and removal of small cell facilities and/or wireless support structures within the City of Bellbrook. And now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains Section 1, the new Chapter 810 entitled Small Cell Facilities and Wireless Structures of the codified ordinance of the City of Bellbrook, Ohio, be enacted to read as set forth in Exhibit A, which is attached here too. Section 2, this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law. So it's my understanding this is just conforming to the state standards that were passed into legislation earlier this year.
Correct. So I think that in the packet, which I just realized attachment A wasn't in there, which was in the last packet. So I'm going to just kind of go through some of the highlights here. So just to give a little bit of a background, House Bill 478 was passed in May of 2018, and if everybody kind of remembers, this was kind of a hot button issue, and it kind of went between municipalities and the telecommunications companies. So this was quite the point of discussion for a while. So what this does is it gives cities the authority to adopt design guidelines, reserve space in the right-of-way or on a structure owned by a city, restrict height to 40 feet, and establish priorities for access to or occupancy or use of a public right-of-way. So what are small cell facilities? These are part of the high-speed broadband connectivity revolution, so it supports the 5G network that everybody's heard of. So this new technology requires smaller structures and more numerous structures. So if you think about it, if you think about the tall cell towers that are everywhere, it's a taller tower, it extends over a broader area, but the signal is weaker. So the idea is these smaller structures are attached to lower structures such as telephone poles and things like that, and it's a stronger signal that extends for a more limited radius. So that's in essence what this whole thing is about. So these are some examples of some small cell structures. So I've got them circled. Most of the time, you probably wouldn't even notice them unless you were looking for them. I've actually made it a point in the last couple of months when I'm going through communities where I know that this has been more widely dispatched, just looking at what these things look like and how numerous they are. So it's interesting. Different communities, this is a much more sought after technology. We have not been approached by anybody yet, which is part of the reason why this legislation was kind of slow to come before council, because we didn't have any applications yet. And unfortunately, this was a pretty massive piece of legislation that changed a number of times, so we kind of waited for everything to get finalized. So these are some examples. Again, there are design guidelines that basically say that these things need to be concealed. They need to match the area or the pole in which it's attached to. As you can see, the one that's on the far right, it sticks out a little bit more because it's not the same color. Clearly that design guideline might have been a little bit differently than what we're adopting. So the highlights of this ordinance, there's a clear purpose and intent that is stated right at the beginning. There's a permit is required for anything that would be attached or built, any type of structure. And there's also an application that's required with a $250 permit fee, which is the same across the board, which is what all cities are adopting. I thought that seemed kind of high, but that's the standard, so we went with what the standard was. There are 3 types of applications: small cell minor, small cell substantial, and a wireless support structure. All the definitions are in our ordinance, but there are 3 different types. So the approval or denial process would lie with me as the city manager, and there are set time frames. If we were flooded with applications, which I don't think is going to happen, but it could in another 5-10 years, who knows. It also gives leeway to be able to have some extensions and things like that. It's all very clearly laid out. There are 15 different standards that are outlined that any applicant would have to abide by. So there are, these are traffic code guidelines from ODOT, and there are several different standards that are set not by the city but by other entities in which have a say in these types of things. Something that's notable for the city of Bellbrook is they can't be placed in front of any type of a historical structure in a highly visible or prominent place. So you would not see these right in front of anything that's a really valuable aesthetic to the city. And none of the placement would require trimming or removal of existing trees, which is good. So we're not going to be tearing down trees in order to put these things up. So all very good things. We also have the right to propose an alternate location if we don't think that the location works for us. So there is an order of preference in which those locations go, and it was on page 15 of the attachment. All of these things have to be concealed, and they must be the smallest size necessary, and they must be camouflaged. So again, trying to make sure that these things are fitting into the surroundings as much as possible, not sticking out like sore thumbs is the goal here. So those are some of the highlights of the ordinance. the ordinance that we're adopting and the design guidelines and standards are pretty much the same that everybody's adopting. These have been vetted by numerous attorneys to make sure that they're legal, and just about everybody has adopted a guideline that's, I'd say, probably 95% what we are adopting as well. So,
Before we get started, just for the record, Donna Seeger Lawson, our council person, she recused herself. Donna works for electric utility, and in theory, these could be attached to a electric pole as part of one of the potentials, so she has recused herself. With that, do we have any questions or
Yeah,
questions?
I have a question, and you may not know this, but the pictures that you showed basically show these they were existing poles. Okay, what happens if one needs to be located, and we have a lot of underground utilities in Bellbrook. What happens if it needs to be placed in an area that doesn't have any utility poles? Is there any,
so
I mean, I know there's a protocol.
yes.
I mean, I don't know what the protocol would be other than put up a pole in someone's yard or in the right of way.
Which we have designated certain areas where utilities are underground, so that would make that difficult for them to put that in our right of way. If our utilities are designated underground, which council passed a resolution designating those areas, I can't remember which month it was in. I think it was in September though. So since we have made a decision to keep utilities underground in certain developments and neighborhoods, we would not allow a pole to go up, because that's kind of, against exactly what we're trying to do aesthetically with forcing the utilities underground. So would they have other options?
Because that might limit that neighborhood's access to 5G service.
Yeah.
And
Well, there are also still streetlights and things like that, so it could go on a streetlight.
But there's neighborhoods that don't have streetlights either.
And that's true. That's true.
I mean, there's lots of pockets of neighborhoods that have nothing. I mean,
Mhm.
Green Meadow Ranch is one of them. I'm pretty sure Vineyard is another one, and Highview Terrace might be even another one.
I think what this ordinance does, when this first was presented at the state level, essentially the city had no control over it.
Right.
And there were lawsuits flying regarding home rule for the cities that they were constitutionally taking away from us, and that's where it's got to this point. I think that the key here would be for us to logically work with someone to meet both the residents' need and the 5G network. There's always going to be situations. Without the change in state legislation, they could have put it in any public right of way,
I remember
without question.
when we had that discussion
Yeah.
earlier, and they could put it in anywhere, and
Yeah.
any height. And I mean, I recognize that we are pretty much restricted as to what the state legislation has passed, and we have to, pass our own ordinances to agree with that. But I was just more interested down the road when questions come about from residents who.
If we get an application, then we would just take it on a case-by-case basis and
Okay.
try to work with them, so. Again, we haven't received any applications for, any part of the city yet, so I'm not sure if, coverage here is just really great and we're not a priority. Not real sure.
Okay.
So this is a public hearing, so is there any other questions on council discussion?
I'd just like to make a comment. If you don't like this, wait a couple of years, it's gonna change again.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
I
Technology
remember
will change.
back when the satellite dishes, the big huge ones were everywhere, that didn't last long, so I imagine these will be changing too. But I do have a question. You said that they have to be camouflaged. What's that entail? I mean, what's that mean?
So these aren't really great examples of the ones that are camouflaged, but these ones were really obvious ones that I found on the internet to let you guys see what they would look like. I've seen some where the pole is completely dark. There's a dark enclosure. It's behind the enclosure, so that would be the camouflage, the screening that's around it,
Okay.
that makes it blend in with the rest of the pole.
Okay.
So unless you really know what you're looking for, most of the time you're not even going to see these things as long as they're done really well.
Most people don't look up either.
No. And I mean, there are so many attachments to poles anyways from various utilities and stuff that are attaching to them. You really wouldn't know what's what unless you are you know, you really have a good frame of reference to be able to identify it.
Yeah.
I've literally started looking for these things just because, and it sometimes I think that I see one, but I'm not real sure still.
Okay,
So,
that's all I have.
Any other questions on council? Seeing none, this is a public hearing, so if anyone in our audience would have any questions this evening, this is your opportunity. Going once, going twice. I will call this public hearing closed. And may I have a motion to approve ordinance number 2019-5?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2019-5.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
And roll call.
Motion was made by Mr. Edwards to approve ordinance 2019-5, an ordinance adding chapter 810, small cell facilities and wireless structures to the codified ordinances of Bellbrook, Ohio. This was seconded by Mr. Greenwood. Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mayor Bayard?
Yes. Moving on, would someone please like to retrieve Councilperson Seeger Lawson? Moving on, we have one introduction of ordinance this evening, ordinance number 2019-6. Mr. Greenwood.
Thank you, Mayor. City of Bellbrook, Ohio, ordinance number 2019-6. An ordinance to approve the rezoning of 28 East South Street from O-1 Office Building District to R3 Multifamily Residential District. Whereas the Bellbrook Planning Board conducted a public hearing on January 31st, 2019 concerning the request to rezone 28 South Street from O1 Office Building District to R3 Multifamily Residential District. And whereas the rezoning will make the zoning of this property consistent with other area properties, and whereas the planning board voted 5-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning request to City Council. Now therefore, the City of Bellbrook hereby ordains. Section 1, that the rezoning of 28 East South Street from O1 Office Building District to R3 Multifamily Residential District is hereby approved. Section 2, that this ordinance shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period allowed by law. I looked at this property. It used to be a doctor's office. I think when I first moved here, it was professional office space, and I think they've had a hard time finding people to lease it. And I talked to some of the people surrounding the property, and they were all for this. So I think it would probably be a good move. But the question I have, the building has two owners. It's split. How does that work? I mean, if they want to, R3 would be 3 units, right?
no, multifamily is
So
2.
it could be multiple units.
Mm-hmm.
Do they, each side could like have 2 or however they want to do it, I guess. I'm not sure how the, I'm not sure about the densities.
So it's, just to give a little bit of a background on this, I'll have a full presentation at the next one. So basically, this is interesting. At the planning board meeting, the real estate agent, or well, it was an agent of the real estate firm, came and actually spoke to the planning board because there are 2 owners, and it's one building, and it's walled off into 2 separate units, 2 separate parcels. And so it was used as different office spaces. I know for sure that part of it was a dental laboratory, and I think that they're still occupying part of it. So the thought is to just restore it back to, and I don't know, I can't remember I don't think that the history on this has ever been 2 residential units, but the thought is to restore this or create this into 2 separate residences. So it would only be two different residences in the one building. So whereas it was 2 offices, now it would just be 2 residences, kind of like a townhome situation. So, it's the only parcel in the surrounding area that is zoned office.
Right.
So there's a strip, and I'll show the map at the next one. There's a strip where it's multifamily residential, pretty much right around that. So this is the only thing that's zoned in a different way. So it really does make sense. So trying to sell the property as an office space isn't going to be as easy as what it would to be able to sell it as multifamily residential. So the density would only be 2 separate families, 2 separate units.
Okay, so 1 family for each. I got you.
Correct. Yep, correct.
Okay, because I didn't understand if it was, they could go in and remodel and do. Okay.
Mm-mm.
So this is a introduction. Is there any questions on council? Any further? Seeing none, may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 2019-6?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to introduce ordinance number 2019-6.
May I have a second?
Second.
And roll call.
Motion was made by Mr. Greenwood to introduce ordinance 2019-6, an ordinance to approve the rezoning of 28 East South Street from O1 office to R3 multifamily residential. This was seconded by Mr. McGill. Mr. Greenwood.
Yes.
Mr. McGill.
Yes.
Mr. Edwards.
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter.
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Schweller.
Yes.
Mr. Baird.
Yes. Moving on, we have one resolution this evening. Resolution number 2019-G. Mr. McGill.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 2019-G, City of Bellbrook, a resolution approving the splitting of lots 61A of the Highview Terrace subdivision, Section 3, Phase 2, into lots 61B and 62A. Whereas the Ohio Revised Code sets forth the planning board as a municipal platting authority, and whereas the requested plat meets the requirements of the city zoning code and subdivision regulation, and whereas the Bellbrook Planning Board has recommended approval of splitting lot 61A of Highview Terrace subdivision, Section 3, Phase 2, into 2 lots, lots 61B and 62A of the same subdivision, and whereas the City of Bellbrook subdivision regulations stipulate that changes to a recorded plat shall be approved by action of the Bellbrook City Council. Now, therefore, and the City of Bellbrook hereby resolves, Section 1, that the splitting of lot 61A of the Highview Terrace subdivision, Section 3, Phase 2, into 2 lots, 61B and 62A, is hereby approved for recording purposes. Section 2, that the mayor and clerk of council are authorized to affix their signatures to the revised record plan. Section 3, that this resolution shall take effect and be in place forthwith.
Okay, so as you all may recall, this came before council in September to split. And now they, to combine, and now they want to split. So, the individuals that own this property bought 2 lots, and they wanted to combine them in order to build one larger home. Went before planning board approved, came before council approved. Property owners decided that they were just going to buy an existing home that was right behind these 2 lots. So they bought this other home, now they want to sell. Instead of selling a combined lot, they want to sell a split lot. So it went before planning board approved, it's coming before council.
So in summary, it's back to the way it originally was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
So the original approved plan for Highview Terrace, so,
Yeah.
is there any questions?
No.
This has been through the planning board again. So, no questions, then may I have a motion to adopt resolution 2019-G?
I move to adopt Resolution 2019G.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
And roll call.
A motion was made by Mr. McGill to adopt resolution 2019-G, a resolution approving the splitting of lot 61A of Highview Terrace subdivision, Section 3, Phase 2, into lots 61B and 62A. Was seconded by Mrs. Middlestetter. Mr. McGill?
Yes.
Mrs. Middlestetter?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Seeger Lawson?
Yes.
Mr. Schweller?
Yes.
Mr. Baird?
Yes. That is all the resolutions, introduction of ordinances, and public hearings this evening. Now we have a city manager's report.
Okay, so I have a few things that I'll briefly run through. Don Buchek's last day in the office was Friday, so we held a little reception for him. Lots of people came out and gave him well wishes. He has accepted a position with the City of Marine as their finance director. So he is technically still with the city until the end of this week, but he took a week of vacation before he started the new job. So with that being said, I had decided to make a little bit of a change to that position, and I wanted to hire a planning and zoning assistant because the comprehensive plan and all that that's going to bring is going to bring an incredible amount of work that's going to require expertise on the part of a planning and zoning person. My background is more finance and management, not planning and zoning, so I need somebody that's really astute in that area that's going to be able to help me to be able to accomplish a lot of those goals and objectives that are laid out in that plan. So we had almost 20 people that applied, lots of really bright people, really qualified people, and we interviewed last week, and I extended an offer to Jeffrey Green, and he has accepted the position, and we're negotiating a start date. So he's currently Riverside's planning and zoning administrator. He's got a master's degree. He's been doing this for a number of years, and I think that he's going to be a very welcome addition, so I'm really excited about that. Comprehensive plan update. Planning board got a first look at that at their last meeting, and they were going to take a month to be able to digest the 65-page report, and then they will be reconvening on February the 28th at 6 p.m. to kind of go over any changes, recommendations, and hopefully possibly recommendation to adopt, and then it would come before council. So I'm really excited about that. I've tried to widely distribute that as much as possible. Everybody that came to the visioning meeting who left their email, I sent them a copy of it. It's on the website. I've put it out on Facebook. I've been talking about it nonstop, handing out print copies to anybody that'll look at it. So I'm just really hoping to continue that public input portion of it now that it's actually a document. So if anybody has any input to that document, even if it's just to give it, a green light, thumbs up, I'm more than willing to have any and all input that we can. So please take a look at the document. It's right on our front page of our website. Really easy to find, and just take a look at it and let me know if you have any comments or suggestions with that. As the chief had mentioned, we're trying to revamp the newsletter a little bit. I want to make sure that the information is fresh and new and relevant, and I tried to dip my toe in the water with that with the last newsletter. Our intern Michaela is doing a wonderful job, and she's going to work on getting that next newsletter out. So I'm really excited to hopefully have some really good information in that and really make that a valuable resource to the community. Two things. I'm going to start on kind of a serious note, and then I'll end on a lighter note. Little Sugar Creek is obviously an issue. That did not save the right font. We had a lot of rain over the last few days. So on Friday, actually at Dawn's reception, Jerry, our service foreman, had been out walking it because they regularly go out and walk it. And with all of this rain, he noticed that there were some issues that were starting to form in just one area, thankfully. This is the area of concern right now. As you can see, with those guardrail pillars being exposed quite a bit, that makes those very weak. So if anybody had been up Little Sugar Creek in the last few days, you might have noticed there were some skinny cones that were on the side of the road. That's just to bring people's attention to hopefully slow down a little bit. With the weather that we had this morning, I was really scared because we had freezing rain and it was very slick, and I know that I had a hard time getting in this morning. So when things like that happen, it makes me very nervous for this. This is probably the most dramatic picture. As you can see, the road has not collapsed at all at this point, but you can see that this has normally had fill all the way up, sloping up against the road to try to support it. They have been filling this for 30 years, from what I understand. So, you know, we had the last big event last March, because it was right before I started, where the road was closed down, and they ended up putting, I think it was 24 inches of gravel, and then they put another 3 inches of asphalt over top of it. So council had tasked me this year. My goal was to find a fix for Little Sugar Creek, and I had already started work on that. The day that you guys told me that, I think I had a meeting with an engineer the next day or two. So Ryan and I had met with an engineer that I've got a really good working relationship right now with, and he told me that he would get some preliminary a preliminary plan to me by the middle of February. So then this happened. So I texted him this very picture on Friday. It was Friday evening, and I said, I think that we might need to accelerate this a little bit. So we actually met with, so Ryan, our service director, Jerry, our service foreman, the engineer, and a geotechnical engineer, and myself were actually out on site this morning, standing and trying to come up with a plan for this. We're hopeful that we might be eligible for OPWC emergency funds. We're not 100% sure if we will yet, but I do have a call scheduled with, now her name is totally slipping me, but the director of Ohio Public Works Commission, Linda Bailiff. I've got a conference call with her tomorrow morning to talk about that possibility. I told her about kind of where we're at and what we're up against. What we talked about this morning out on site was basically the geotechnical engineer would do one boring on the higher side and then 2 borings on the lower side. They're going to give us the option to possibly drop some sensors down in there where it will go down quite a ways, and those sensors will be able to determine if there's any shifting or movement and where exactly that's occurring, how far down that's occurring. So I'm not sure of those depths or anything like that yet, but given the fact that there's 30 years worth of fill here, they're going to have to take that down to where it's stable, those borings down to where it's stable, to try to figure out exactly what we're up against. Our service foreman asked if steel sheeting would be a good option. They said that that's actually the more expensive route. Not that it's not possible, but basically looking at some concrete wall is probably the better solution and the most economical, which I was pretty surprised at. So the way that they're going to kind of look at this is, we've got a major area of concern right now, and they're going to look at a plan that would fix, you know, the entire length, trying to figure out how much of that we're looking at, and, you know, thinking holistically how we're going to fix the whole thing, and then really focus in on fixing this one section right now. So we wouldn't be fixing this one section right now and then have to go back and refix it when we fix all of it. That's not the goal. The goal is to come up with what a good solution for the whole stretch is, however much length that's going to be. And then what they'll do is they will just start with this section, and maybe we can get emergency funding. What that's going to mean for the city, I'm still not 100% sure of yet. I don't know what that funding mechanism looks like and what that means for us. So I will know much more tomorrow. So my goal is to update council as soon as I have more information, hopefully by the end of the week, so that you guys are kept in the loop on this. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Is that a permissive use tax roadway? I don't think it is.
I don't think it is, no. I can double check, but I don't think it is. And the emergency funding through OPWC is basically for communities that have been maintaining and doing what they can to make sure that, you know, emergencies don't occur. So I think that the city has done a pretty good job of making sure that they've tried to do everything that they can. Unfortunately, we can't, you know, we've got a major water issue right there, and everybody knows it. So, you know, I think that this is just something that we've tried to manage as long as we could, and now it's really presenting itself as a problem because here we are not even 12 months later, and we've got another possible difficult situation here.
We've had a lot of water.
Yeah,
last
she's
couple-
excavated by the
last couple weeks.
Yep.
so.
And it's a lot of increased traffic,
Yeah.
and it's a protected river, so.
There's a lot of things that have happened, and to learn about the sewer line that the county put in, they kind of really messed with the creek when they did that, and the way that it was, the way that it was being directed and things, from what I understand. It's been, I'm not real well versed on the history behind this thing, but I mean, there's been a lot that's happened that's really been different driving factors to this. So, I did, when I initially met with the engineer before we had this little situation that's popped up, I did say that I would like, my goal is for this long-term fix to address the pedestrian issue that we have too, because I don't think that it's fair to fix one thing without addressing the other, because
I agree.
that safety issue, we don't have a lot of room, but it's still a safety issue for pedestrians. So that is part of the fix that I'm hoping is going to be incorporated in the plan.
Agree.
So I know that that was a long, but I mean, that required a bit of discussion, just so that council knows. So I told you I'd end on a high note, so this is my high note. So one of the things that I asked our service department to do, or if there was a possibility, I said, do you guys have like old construction materials laying around that you could do some little free libraries? I was thinking they might do one or two. I'm not sure if any of you have seen these, but they're small structures and they house books, and it's just a neat, community thing where if you can go, you can take a look. If there's a book, you can take it if you're interested, and then you can bring it back or leave a different book. And these, it's just a really fun thing that builds community. So our service department over the winter, they didn't spend a lot of time on these, which you're not going to believe me when I tell you that when you see these, but they finished 4 of these. So they kind of made a little contest amongst themselves. So today was the day of the unveiling, and I got to pick a winner, which was brutal. I had to be twisted into a corner to pick one. So there were 4. This one was created by John Dalton. So these are just kind of on temporary pedestals until they figure out where they're going and how they need to install these. So it's really hard to see, but this is a plexiglass door on here. And there's actually an etched Ohio State logo in the door.
Oh.
It's pretty cool. So that was created by John Dalton. This one it's sitting on top of a trash can, so that's not part of the design, but this one was created by Paul Stroud. And this one is wonderful. The both sides, the front and the back, are exactly the same. They both say Little Library. They both have doors, so you can get to it from the front or the back, which I think is really cool. So that was Paul Stroud's creation. This was Brett Wasty's creation. His is the most colorful. I won't say it's the most colorful, but it's definitely the most reflective. So we've just got to be careful where we put this one, because there's a lot going on. But the creativity has been unreal with these things. I was blown away. I thought that these were just going to be boxes with a little roof on them, and oh no, our service department is
not with that crew.
They are something else. Like, I was amazed. This, however, is the one that took the cake. And you have got to see this thing in person. This was a barrel. There's a ceramic flower pot that was on the top, so it's built to look like a fire hydrant, and it's amazing. So when I got my arm twisted to have to pick one, this is the one that I picked, and Matt Sanderman was the one that created this one. I think that we're going to put this up near Fire Station 2, so that neighborhood up there in the North Linda area can be able to access this one. So where all these are going exactly, we still have to identify. I know that in front of the State Farm Agency and where Floral V is, they were interested in putting one there, and the property owner is open to that. So we'll likely put one there, put one near Fire Station 2. And then we thought about maybe one at Patricus Park, somewhere near that neighborhood. And then the 4th one, we're not 100% sure yet. We thought somewhere near Bellbrook, maybe the one that looks like the little log cabin that would really fit in well with the area. But I had to show council this because
That's cool.
they're amazing. So I'd like to do a little ribbon cutting in the spring, with one of the little free libraries and get some good PR, but, we're actually partnering with the Girl Scouts. They haven't accepted our proposal yet, but, the intern Michaela, she went and spoke to one of the Girl Scout troops on Sunday and presented a proposal to them so that they could actually be in charge of getting all of the books to stock these, and then part of their project would be that they would go and check them periodically to make sure that nobody's putting their library books in there on accident as if it's a return. Just making sure that, you know, they're not leaking and things like that, and just kind of keeping an eye on them. So hopefully they accept our proposal, and that's how we can get the books for them. If not, then we'll figure out another way that maybe the community can get involved. But very cool stuff, I think. So
They have one of those up at the intermediate school. When they
Mhm.
did that reading courtyard a couple years ago, they have a, outside the school, they put one in.
they're really cool.
Yeah.
So we're just
Yeah,
hoping
they're
to
very
extend
creative.
it a little bit wider into the
Yeah.
community, and hopefully everybody can get excited about it and be a part of it. So I think that was the longest manager's report ever, but cool stuff happening.
Does anyone on city council have any questions for our city manager this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to committee report service.
Well, now I want to say great job to the service department for putting together the free libraries. Those are really cool. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Some good creativity and some great thinking there, so thank you for that. Also want to thank them again for clean streets. Every time we have a snow emergency, all of our streets in Bellbrook are clear, even on Saturdays and Sundays, which seems like when we're getting the snow. And so I just want to remind folks to please do not park on the street if at all possible during a snow emergency. So our trucks can get through a lot better if there are fewer cars parked on the street. So I know that's not always possible, but if it is possible, please be mindful of that. That's all I have.
Safety,
No report, Mayor.
finance and audit.
No report tonight, Mayor. Just wanted to talk to the city manager to see if we've got any progress on the audit. Has that started, or?
Financial statements need to be created first, so we have been submitting everything. They gave us, you know, an extensive list of everything
Yeah.
that they needed, so we're all in the process of submitting all of those things for the financial statements right now.
Is the audit scheduled then, do we know, or do we have a date for it, or?
No, once the financial statements are created, then the audit will start directly thereafter.
Okay. All right, thanks. Nothing else to report.
Community affairs.
The only thing I have is to thank all the volunteers who have been serving on boards and all the new people who have stepped up, because there's quite a lot of work being done, and there's a lot of people who have stepped forward, and we're always appreciative of their efforts.
And I'd like to thank the committee with doing all the interviews and all that kind of stuff, so thank you very much. Old business. Do we have any old business to come before us this evening? New business, Council of Communications, Forrest.
I talked to Melissa earlier in the week about board meeting minutes, when we would be getting those. And, you know, before you have some legislation, sometimes it's nice to read those. And she said she did not have any guidance as to what we want as a council, how we want to have them present it to us. And
What board meetings, what in reference
Planning
to?
board and
Planning board.
Oh, planning,
Board of
oh,
Zoning
Yeah.
Appeals.
you know, we use those. I like to read them before.
If we just give the
Yeah.
minutes to read.
And, you know, we got new staff, you know,
Mhm.
and they may not know what we want. or-
well, what do we get from the planning board, the BZA now? We get I
Well-
always get the,
That's what we need to know, because there was no passing of a torch of that information, so Pam and I
always seem like I got the email with each one.
We used to get.
Well,
them.
you might have.
Yeah, the
But-
minutes. Okay.
We didn't have
We have
any
not done
old
recently.
emails from the previous clerk. They were all wiped out. So we don't have that frame of reference. So I know I wasn't doing it because I didn't know before Pam came on, so I didn't know to tell Pam. So it just kind of hasn't been done because we weren't aware.
So, and I do have a question. So, do you want the ones that have been approved by those boards, you know, after they've seen them? Because like for some of those boards,
They don't
There's
meet.
a long,
I think the draft minutes would be
You think the drafts
appropriate
are
because
okay?
that's
minutes.
more timely.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
You could even put draft on it, so that means
Okay,
it's not
yeah.
approved yet.
I just remember, I always read the minutes, especially the BZA,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it can be interesting.
It's helpful to know what's going on, and that's all we need.
So once
email.
the drafts are completed and sent to the boards, maybe send those to
Send it to
council
us.
at the
Just copy
same
us on
time?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of the boards don't meet that often, so.
No.
so
Well,
maybe
the
with
planning board is
Planning board
gonna.
right now.
Yeah.
So they've had their work cut out for them for a while this year. So.
Even a draft answers a lot of questions.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Is there anything on a regular basis that council has not gotten that they did in the past that Pam or I should be aware of, just so that we're all on the same page?
I can't think of
I'm
it.
not- Nothing anymore.
So like the police department annual report tonight, that totally slipped because I had gotten the presentation and I had a draft, which I think was obvious because the mileage, the
Wasn't
miles.
in there, I saw
It
it.
wasn't in there, but this was all I had. So I think that, once I get this first full year under my belt, I'll be much better next year.
Yeah.
But I kind of panicked because Mr. Edwards said, "Oh, well, normally we get these beforehand," and I went, "Oh my gosh, I didn't do that." So, just please bear with me, and if I'm not doing something that has been done in the past, please just let me know because I probably, just wasn't sure.
I think we get a fire department report too, when that comes out.
Yeah, and you know what?
And I don't know, but I don't remember about service. I don't know if we get one on service.
I
I
think we
don't think
did.
that-
I think it was short, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure we had a service report.
Not last year, I know that. If that's something that,
Before.
I would like to see a service report.
Yeah.
okay, so a service report, so maybe we can do, we've got fire on the agenda for the next meeting, so maybe we could do service the following, okay,
Yeah.
we can do that.
That works.
Did you pick up on maybe some trends or something that's, like maintenance and things like that?
Well, also, I think they work real hard. It'd be nice to have some recognition of what it is that they're working on and doing.
So the next annual report will be much smoother.
Your first time, I guess we could have given you a little more guidance.
Unfortunately for Chief Doherty, but for Chief Neidhart, he's gonna come in here golden, so it'll be great.
And then they'll have the formats from what they did last year, so it shouldn't be that big a deal.
Yeah.
So new business, is there any other new business coming for us? Before we move on to open discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead with open discussion. Nick?
I'd just like to thank Chief Doherty for his annual report, which was impeccably prepared as usual, and thank our police department for everything they do to keep the community safe.
Forrest?
I just like to thank all the people who volunteer for the boards. They really help us out. They're really important, and we really got some really sharp people on the boards. I really appreciate it. That's all I have.
Mr. McGill?
Yeah, I'd like to have a shout out to Dr. Kozad and Jennifer Hahn over there, who does the dietitian and dietitian issues with respect to the school lunch periods. I went over there for a Lunch with Leaders program that they have, which is pulling leaders from the community together, matching up with the kids who may have an interest in government, or we just want to know more about the city itself. And I'll tell you what, I had a very good time with the kids from Bell Creek Intermediate School and the middle school itself, interacting with them. Middle school kids, they're more cliquey, if I could say. That, you have to engage them in conversation. But the ones from Bell Creek Intermediate School were really fun to be with because they're third, fourth, fifth grade, area that. And parents, you should know that they're well behaved. They are very polite. They're very courteous. Ask some pretty good questions. Okay, and they do eat their whole lunch. So I will let you know that.
At least they did that day.
At least they did that day. That's right. That's right. So thank you again for that. And they have chef. I guess it's
Coming up.
future chef program coming up. They're looking for volunteers either from the community and leaders or from city government to come back and help with the mentoring of the kids that are want to be a future chef.
Yeah, they'll need someone to help the kids cook and then get set up to judge, and then they'll
Yeah.
need judges.
Do they,
Yeah.
they need taste testers?
Well,
Oh.
judges. Well, judges are taste testers, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it was a good experience, so if you're not involved in it right now, please, give
It is
Jennifer.
fun.
give
I have
Jen-
the passes
give-
for
give
the
Jen-
luncheon.
Give Jennifer a call, and she'll happily set you up with a time when you can go over to schools. Okay?
Well, I want to do that, but I don't have anything else other than to extend the same thank yous that we've
Yes.
mentioned already.
I also wanted to thank Chief Doherty and the police officers that are doing all the community policing and the community involvement. I think it's really great to see these pictures of the kids interacting with the police officers
Yes.
and them being out in the community. I think we've come miles, I think, since I've been attending city council meetings with the police force and the community.
Mr. Weller?
Nothing to report tonight or nothing else to state that's already been said, so I echo everybody else's comments.
And I would concur with that statement. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to come up and give input or ask questions. Mayor Graves, thank you for staying for one of the longest meetings in probably a year and a half. And you stayed for the whole thing. I do see someone who would like to come up to the podium this evening, and hopefully he's got the camera on himself since I can't move it from here.
I got it on you guys.
Okay.
I'm Louis Schatzberg. I live at 4082 Ridgetop Drive. Going along with the communications to council, I think I would like to hear as a citizen a recap of the boards, of what the planning board has done or what the BZA has done over the year. Because we have these boards that are active and then we get people on them. Some people go, there's a BZA or there's a planning board. I have no idea what they really do. So I think, anything like that that's in the community, I think would be a good idea, and, like we do with the police and the fire. I mean, all of our departments do a lot of work for the citizens. The problem is, we're all at work when they're out working, because for most of us work day shift, and that's when most of the work gets done is during the day. And a lot of people may not know how that gets done or why this happens or that happens, so I would suggest that we kind of look at all of our boards and information within the city to see if everything's getting disseminated down to the citizens already. So thank you.
We'll have to figure out a mechanism for that.
That's a good point.
Obviously, all the meetings are public.
Right.
And we have a lot of boards, so you got planning, BZA, museum, Old Village Review Board, Records Commission,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but see, I know some of those boards
Miami Valley
only meet.
Regional Planning
you
Commission,
know.
Greene County Regional Planning
Right.
Commission.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's important to they will know if they watch the meetings and read the
Right.
minutes, but as far as a summary of the year,
Mhm.
but think about it.
Are
Right.
those
Figure out what-
minutes, posted on our website? I don't remember seeing them there.
It's something that they are.
They're
and
out there, you have
That's
to go
something that
searching for them.
Pam and I are gonna work together to make sure that that's put out
Yep.
in a timely manner, but they are out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I haven't looked recently.
yep.
Maybe put a summary in our newsletter or something on them.
Yeah, at least highlights. So, obviously the planning commission, it's not that important when they're, with the Highview Terrace, but when you have something about the comprehensive
A lot of
plan, it is
stuff.
important,
Right.
so.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that, it's just to let the citizens know that these boards are active and they are doing things and to let them know what they're doing. So when they hear that there's openings on them, they kind of go, oh, I've heard about that and that's what they do. I mean, that's the way I've got involved with the city is, I was on the planning board for 10 years and I've been doing the camera for, I don't know, a long time too, 15 years. But this is the thing that I enjoy the best because it forces me to stay in contact with what's going down here. And when I'm talking to people in the community, I tell them all the time, come to the city council. We elect those people up there to do a job. They want to hear from you. They want to hear good or bad. I mean, a lot of times the only time people come up here is when they're mad at us because somebody closed the road because I think you guys do a good job with the information you have at hand. But you can't act on something if you don't know anything about it. And you got somebody out there in the community says, oh, they should know that. Maybe city council's not in that part of the neighborhood to know it. We can't assume that they know everything that's going on. I mean, the service department takes care of the potholes the best that they can. But if there's a pothole somewhere that's not getting attention, somebody needs to know, hey, you know, and can't assume that the service department knew about it and is just ignoring it. You know, that's where I think is the problem, so. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Lou, for the input. I think it's something we need to
Good
take
idea, Lou.
consideration, for sure, figure out the best way to communicate that. Looking out, Mary, it's your last chance.
I'll be down again, so.
Okay. Does any member on council have any other business come before us at the city council meeting this evening?
I do not.
If not, this meeting is adjourned.